The Five Chinese Brothers. Once upon a time, there were five Chinese brothers, and they looked exactly alike. They lived with their mother in a little house not far from the sea. The first Chinese brother could swallow the sea. The second Chinese brother had an iron neck. The third Chinese brother could stretch and stretch and stretch his legs. The fourth Chinese brother could not be burned, and the fifth Chinese brother could hold his breath indefinitely. Every morning, the first Chinese brother would go fishing, and whatever the weather, he would come back to the village with a beautiful and rare fish which he had caught and could sell at the market for a very good price. One day, as he was leaving the marketplace, a little boy stopped him and asked him if he could go fishing with him. No, it could not be done, said the first Chinese brother. But the little boy begged, and finally the first Chinese brother consented. Under one condition, he said, and that is you shall obey me promptly. Yes, yes, the little boy promised. Early next morning, first Chinese brother and the little boy went down to the beach. Remember, said the first Chinese brother, you must obey me promptly. When I make a sign for you to come back, you must come at once. Yes, yes, the little boy promised. Then the first Chinese brother swallowed the sea. And all the fish were left high and dry in the bottom of the sea, and the treasures of the sea laid uncovered. The little boy was delighted. He ran here and there, stuffing his pockets with strange pebbles, extraordinary shells, and fantastic algae. Near the shore, the first Chinese brother gathered some fish while he kept holding the sea in his mouth. Presently he grew tired. It is very hard to hold the sea, so he made a sign with his hands for the little boy to come back. The little boy saw him and paid him no attention. The first Chinese brother made great movements with his arms that meant, come back. But did the little boy care? Not a bit, and he ran further. Then the first Chinese brother felt the sea swelling inside him, and he made desperate gestures to call the little boy back. But the little boy made faces at him and fled as far as he could. The first Chinese brother held the sea until he thought he was going to burst. All of a sudden, the sea forced its way out of his mouth, went back into the bed, and little boy disappeared. When the first Chinese brother returned to the village alone, he was arrested, put in prison, tried and condemned to have his head cut off. On the morning of the execution, he said to the judge, Your Honor, will you allow me to go and bid my mother goodbye? It is only fair, said the judge. So the first Chinese brother went home, and the second Chinese brother came back in his place. All the people assembled on the village square to witness the execution. The executioner took his sword and struck a mighty blow. But the second Chinese brother got up and smiled. He was the one with the iron neck, and they simply could not cut his head off. Everyone was angry, and they decided he should be drowned. On the morning of the execution, the second Chinese brother said to the judge, Your Honor, will you allow me to go and bid my mother goodbye? It is only fair, said the judge. So the second Chinese brother went home, and the third Chinese brother came back in his place. He was pushed on a boat which made for the open sea. When they were far off on the ocean, the third Chinese brother was thrown overboard. But he began to stretch and stretch and stretched his legs way down to the bottom of the sea. And all the time, his smiling face was bobbing up and down on the crest of the waves. He simply could not be drowned. Everyone was very angry, and they decided that he should be burned. On the morning of the execution, the third Chinese brother said to the judge, "Your Honor, will you allow me to go and bid my mother goodbye?" "It is only fair," said the judge. So the third Chinese brother went home, and the fourth Chinese brother came back in his place. He was tied to a stake. Fire was set on it, and all the people stood around watching it. In the midst of the flames they heard him say, "This is quite pleasant. Bring some more wood," the people cried. The fire roared higher. "Now it is quite comfortable," said the fourth Chinese brother, for he was the one who could not be burned. Everyone was getting more and more angry every minute, and they decided to smother him. On the morning of the execution, the fourth Chinese brother said to the judge, "Your Honor, will you allow me to go and bid my mother goodbye?" "It is only fair," said the judge. So the fourth Chinese brother went home, and the fifth Chinese brother came back in his place. A large brick oven had been built on the village square, and it had been all stuffed with whipped cream. The fifth Chinese brother was shoved into the oven, right in the middle of the cream. The door was shut tight, and everyone sat around and waited. They were not going to be tricked again, so they stayed there all night, even a little after dawn, just to make sure. Then they opened the door and pulled him out, and he shook himself, saying, "My, that was a good sleep." Everyone stared open-mouthed and round-eyed. But the judge stepped forward and said, "We have tried to get rid of you in every way, and somehow it cannot be done. It must be that you are innocent." "Yes, yes," shouted all the people. So they let him go, and he went home. And the five Chinese brothers and their mother all lived happily ever after for many years. And the five Chinese brothers and their mother all lived together happily for many years. The end.